everyone, and welcome to this midweek motivational webinar brought to you by Red January and Happiful. So glad for you to join us. And today we are going to be talking about movement for self-care, connection and mood. And my name is Kat Nicholls and I'm a writer here at Happiful and also a confidence mentor. And I'm joined by the brilliant Tally Rai and Dr. Radha Modgil. So to start us off, I would love it if our panelists could introduce themselves. So Radha, could you please go first and tell us a little bit more about you?
Yes, hello everyone, it's really lovely to be here. So I'm Radha, I'm a doctor, I'm a GP, and I also do broadcasting work, so Radio 1, Radio 5, I'm a writer, I love writing about life, and I've just published my first book all on my own, so which is called Know Your Own Power. So my real big passions actually are around mental health, emotional well-being, but actually looking at that holistically. So how do we kind of get through life and what can we learn from each other? So that's my real passion, and that's why I love doing this kind of stuff.
Oh, amazing. Congratulations on the book. That's amazing. Thank you. And Tally, how about yourself? Could you introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, so I'm a personal trainer and an author also, and I really specialise in helping people with their relationship with exercise. So I really focus on that mental health aspect and making sure that we feel good about moving our bodies, which I think is going to be the theme for today.
Yes, absolutely. We are going to get into that. And to start us off, I thought we would chat a little bit more about our own relationships with exercise, just to give a little bit of context, because it can be a really tricky thing. And I know for me personally, I've had a very turbulent relationship with exercise. So for me in my teen years, I actually struggled with an eating disorder. And through that, it made me see exercise as punishment, as a tool to change who I was. And I had a really negative relationship with it and a really toxic relationship with it. And then throughout my recovery, I almost rejected it. I was slightly worried I was going to become triggered again. And I just thought, you know what, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to focus on my mental health and everything else. Apart from yoga was the one thing I kept going back to. But everything else I kind of shunned. I shunned the fitness world and health promoting behaviors because I thought I was too worried about that. Until the beginning of this year, which is when, after a couple of years in the pandemic, a couple of years of my lifestyle becoming much more sedentary, my body was really crying out for movement. I was getting some joint pain. I was starting to get out of breath from doing really regular things around the house. So I realized that I need to look at fitness and exercise not in the negative way that I saw it, but as a positive influence and a way for me to feel better. And that is something I'm navigating now. So I joined the Red January community this year. This is the first time I've done it. So I'm intentionally moving my body every day. And I'm just trying to navigate the fitness world without the addition of diet culture and seeing it in this negative way. And I have to say, Tally, you've been a massive influence to me on that, learning how to navigate that without all of that other bad stuff. So Tally, I'd love to hear a bit more about your story and your relationship with exercise and movement.
Yeah, so kind of similar to a degree. I didn't really formally exercise besides trying to dodge PE as a teenager, but I got into exercise when I started pursuing musical theatre as like a 17, 18-year-old. And then as I started full-time training at drama school in my early 20s is when I really decided to try and become a fitness person. And so I was singing, dancing, acting every day, and then I was going to the gym on top of that. And at the time I thought I was just really passionate about the gym. In hindsight, I realized it was really obsessive and a way I was trying to control a lot of difficult things in my life, and one being the loss of my dad when I was 17. So as a kind of a knock-on effect, I started to engage in a really obsessive relationship with exercise, which, like I said, I misinterpreted for passion. And so when I graduated drama school, I decided I wanted to become a personal trainer. I felt like I had achieved all these fitness goals. I'd had this big body transformation and I wanted to help other people too. and naively just thought, I'll become a personal trainer because I can do it, you can do it, and started working in the industry almost 8 years ago. So that was, like I said, early in my 20s. And since then, I've gone on a real evolution of, reflecting on my own relationship with exercise and food and all those things, and realizing that, a lot of what I was doing was obsessive, disordered, and I needed to kind of redefine my relationship with exercise. And so in more recent years, I discovered intuitive eating, which some people may have heard of, and that really helped me with my relationship with food. But I felt that I needed to kind of put my relationship with exercise under the same level of microscope. I needed to peel back the layers and really think about why I was moving my body, and, was it really what I wanted to do, or what was I doing largely what I felt I should be doing? And so I then explored this idea of intuitive movement. I've since written about it, and my book Train Happy kind of explores deconstructing that relationship with exercise and rebuilding it through intuitive movement. And the journal I've just released, the Intuitive Movement Journal, is essentially like the how to do that. And so now I, like you, Kat, have redefined my relationship with exercise to being about self-care, to being about supporting my mental health, to being about enjoying what I want to do. And I think for me, one of the key things has been realizing that moving your body can be so varied and so broad. It doesn't have to be in the confines of a gym. It doesn't have to look like the fitness people you follow on Instagram. It can be what feels right for you. And that's the place I've got to now. And so yeah, I'm super passionate about sharing that knowledge with others and helping people recognize, maybe the difficult parts in their relationship with exercise, and hope, to get them at a place where they can feel good and feel relaxed about moving their body, rather than feel anxious and guilt and shame, really.
Absolutely, and that is the key, and that is what we'll go into a little bit more as well, was this whole idea of intuitive movement, because I find it so interesting and it's been such a game changer for me. And Radha, how about yourself? Can you tell us a bit more about your relationship with exercise and how it's changed over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, there are sort of a couple of things that keep me well, and exercise is definitely in my top three. So exercise, nature, and music for me are just incredible. And if you combine them all together, if I go out for a run outside of my music, then I can't get any better feeling, I don't think, than that. So I was always someone, I suppose, who kind of got involved in sports teams, at school, and kind of saw, I suppose, exercise and sport as a way to connect. So I'm very much a people person. I love teamwork. I love kind of bonding with people. So I think that was my first experience really of sort of sport and exercise, was that kind of team mentality, which I really enjoyed and actually really missed, because I kept that going through university. But when I started working, then, working in hospital as a junior doctor was really busy, so that kind of fell by the wayside. And I started to really notice that actually I really missed that connection and that team sort of atmosphere and that structure. And for a couple of years, I didn't really do much exercise actually, which was quite unusual for me. And then I started to notice, the impact of that on my mood and my mental health. I was working very long hours in the hospital, having irregular sleep patterns, doing night shifts, for example. And I started to then think, well, you know what, I really need to take sort of some ownership over my exercise. I've always had sort of exercise and sport kind of as something which is a default, something structured in, and actually I now want to try to develop my relationship with exercise and movement to be something that's that makes me feel good, that makes me feel like I'm making a good choice for myself, and very much so that actually, movement for me and using my body is very much all about my mental health. It's not about, it is about physical health, obviously, because you get that benefit as well. But for me, my choice to exercise and to move is really to keep myself well and to keep myself feeling less anxious and to keep myself feeling energized. So I really started to relate very strongly my mental health and emotional health with my choice, my ability to move and to exercise. And really since then, I think I then kind of started to use it in that way and started to view it in that way and reframe it in that way. And I think that relationship now has become really nicely set in my system. So now I know if I'm having a bit of a tough day, I might not be able to go and, you know, run however many kilometers, or, you know, do that kind of gym class with the weights that looks all kind of, you know, the thing that you should do for your goal. But I know that actually, even on a bad day, if I can just get myself out the door and just walk around the block, or, you know, just stretch a bit, or just look after my body with some kind of movement, that's a good choice for me, and I'm going to feel better for it. So it's definitely that link, I think, between, you know, feeling good and keeping well, and exercise for me has been really, really set. And it's definitely during the pandemic, without exercise and movement, I think I would have been really lost, because that honestly really did keep me really well. I think the other thing that I feel really strongly about, and I try to do a lot of this in my work, sort of media work, is that on so many platforms, you know, we still see images of people in that very set environment, you know, of a gym, you know, someone exercising but not apparently sweating or looking red in the face. Someone who's about to go out, who's just come back from a run, but their trainers are completely clean and they're not muddy. And I'm really keen on, you know, trying to break apart those images, those stereotypes, because those stereotypes and those images, all they do really is obstruct people from actually starting to make those positive changes for themselves, because they can't relate to what they see, because it's not real. And so I'm really keen on getting the reality of what movement is. And also, you know, like you were both saying, Tally and Kat, to allow people to use movement in the way they want to use it. So not a prescribed gym class. You know, if you like boxing, if you like running, if you like yoga, if you like dancing or roller skating, or if you like trampolining, I got a little mini trampoline during the pandemic, you know, that's okay. You know, I think sometimes we make movement so sort of adult like, you know, we forget the fun and the passion and the joy. And I'm really keen on encouraging and helping everyone realize that actually they can be childlike, they can enjoy themselves. And that actually, if we make it fun and we make it happy and we make it about connection, then actually we're more likely to then develop that great habit for ourselves, which is all about staying well.
Absolutely, that's so true. And I think, yeah, what you were saying about being real and, you know, looking red and sweaty, that's really resonated. I can see a couple of people in the chat have said, oh my gosh, yes, I feel I'm the only one who goes red sometimes. You're not alone. I go beetroot. And yeah, posting a sweaty selfie after my run on Strava or Facebook, Nikki, that's brilliant. And it's really interesting to see everyone's results as well about what you were saying about your relationship with exercise. So here are the poll results. So a good 52% of you said that your relationship with exercise needs some work and that you tend to berate yourself for not doing enough. 28% of you say that your relationship with exercise is good and that it feels, what you do feels great. And then 20% of you say it's not good and that you see it as a chore and a punishment. So it sounds like most of you need a little bit of work and you want to work on it. So hopefully what we're going to talk about will really help. And Radha, what you were saying about the connection between self-care and mental health and physical health was really interesting. And that takes me nicely on to talking about movement for mood and self-care. And this has been a really powerful reframe for me, is to see it as self-care and knowing that it's not only helping my physical health, but my mental health as well. As I said, I struggled when I was a teen and I still live with anxiety. That's something I battle with today. So I know this can be quite difficult for people, though, is to see it as self-care and to start doing it for that reason. And I know in your book, you talk a lot about navigating challenging situations like what we've been going through in the last couple of years. So I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on how we can tap into the power that we have to transform our relationship with movement and other health promoting behaviors.
Yeah, so I think so when I use the word power in relation to my book, and often we kind of associate power with authority figures, or, you know, people who are outside of ourselves, or being strong in inverted commas and just getting up there and getting on with it. But actually, that's not what, for me anyway, that's not what power is. The way I think about our own inner power is actually we have the skills inside of us, and we can develop those skills by practicing and understanding ourselves more. And that power looks like different things. So on a bad day, that kind of tapping into that power might just might be about being kind to yourself and actually just having a cry, or comforting yourself, or knowing what makes you feel safe emotionally. On other days, it might be developing those goals and those habits and getting practical and doing all the things we automatically think of as sort of powerful. But actually, there's so much power in the gentle and the kind and the comfort and the safety, and giving yourself really what you need in that moment. So I feel our power is about understanding ourselves and developing a relationship with ourselves where actually we can make those moment to moment choices. So if we feel sad in that moment, we can sit back and say, okay, I'm going to take a breath. This is how I'm feeling right now. What options do I have? What choices do I have in this moment? What do I need? And can I give myself what I need? And that might be all kinds of different things according to how you feel, what the day's like, and actually what's going on for you. So I think when it comes to movement, it's all about making that choice for yourself, I suppose, and self-care. Our bodies are amazing. We can use them as amazing instruments to help process feelings. So I'm a big advocate of talking about challenging feelings, difficult feelings, making sure that we're actually being open about those. So again, if you're feeling angry, that's a perfectly valid feeling to have. There's a purpose behind that. There's a reason why you're feeling angry, and it needs to be heard, it needs to be listened to, and it needs to be processed. So how can we do that how can you make a choice in that moment to do that in a healthy way? Is it by sticking on a bit of Florence and the Machine and singing top of your voice? Is it about going out for a run? Is it about writing something down? How can you process that feeling of anger in a way that you can get that out of your system, and then you can see things more clearly, and then you can start to just make those changes to change the situation or to understand yourself better in terms of where that feeling has come from. So for me, I think it all comes down to those tiny little moment-to-moment choices, and our bodies are incredible at helping us process emotion, at kind of making us feel energized, making us feel calm. We can use our breath, our body. And what's interesting is that we've all been through periods of stress where maybe we haven't been able to do as much exercise or movement as we liked. I think our bodies store that tension in our muscles. We get sore shoulders, we might get a sore back. Our body almost is a little bit of a repository or a record of our emotional state. So it's really important that we use our body. It's there to help us in a healthy way for our mental health and to actually get through life. And I think for me, that's what we all hold. We have that power. It's just about recognizing it's there and then understanding ourselves enough to make those tiny choices. And we can't always do it. I can't always do it, and that's okay too. So it's just about, I think, building that sense of trust in yourself that in this moment, whatever I'm going through or coping with, I can actually manage this and I'll be okay. And how can I use my body and movement to help me do that?
I love that. And I love the idea of using your body to process difficult emotions as well, like anger. I think that's a really good one and something I'm going to definitely keep in mind. And just looking through the chat, we have got Ro was saying, I started to reframe my workouts by telling myself this is for a healthy heart and not about trying to have a perfect body. And yeah, that's really, really important. Thank you for sharing that. We also had a comment from Laura saying, do others really feel better for doing exercise? I do it because science says I'll feel better, but I don't think I've felt it. And a couple of people saying that, yes, they do after certain activities. Other people relating, saying they can get easily bored. Yeah, saying that if you find something that makes your heart sing, and I think that is the important thing, is finding something that really works for you. And Tali, I'm going to come to you on this because I think something that can help us with this reframing and improving our relationship is intuitive movement and finding the things that work. So I'd love it if people haven't heard of this concept before, if you could explain it for everyone and maybe give people some tips on how they could get started with it.
Okay, I have so many thoughts on Laura's statement, so I've got a lot of thoughts. So firstly, intuitive movement is a framework of 9 principles to help you reflect and rebuild your relationship with exercise. The first principle is called reject the diet mentality, and this is the kind of founding principle. And if you're familiar with intuitive eating, you'll realize that they are sisters, they are cousins, and this principle is all about working on that intention behind why you're choosing to move and what the intention is for you. And I think that point about saying, I just don't get that feeling with what I'm doing, maybe to do with firstly the intention behind why you're doing it, and then secondly, you're building your intrinsic motivation to exercise. So Radha gave some fantastic examples of her intrinsic reasons for why she chooses to move her body. She knows it supports her mental health. She knows that if she just does a little bit, then that really helps her mood and supports herself. All of those things are internal to Radha. They are not external influences like the science tells me I should do this. Those external influences are what we think of as our intrinsic motivating factors, and those are often, I need to look good on holiday, I'm shedding for the wedding, I, have to be fit for an event or whatever else, or it's January and I should be exercising because people told me I should feel guilty about eating food at Christmas. Those are all external to you, and if you feel like there's an external pressure telling you to do something and planting seeds in your head that you should feel guilty about XYZ, or you should look a certain way as a result of exercise, that's external. And one of the things I talk about a lot is diet culture, that this messaging around how bodies should look, and that we should be pursuing the beauty standard, and we should be pursuing thinness no matter the cost. That is very external to us. And so the norm is to have to find motivation through external reasons to ourselves, but through intuitive movement, it's really about building up your intrinsic motivating factors for you, so that you can find reason to move your body for the long term. So, once you go on holiday, you'll want to keep moving when you get home, because that wasn't the thing you were building up to. It's about cultivating this for the rest of your life, hopefully. And so with all of that in mind, I think it's also important to think about what we can move. And another one of the principles of intuitive movement is called challenging the fitness police. And so I like to think of that as like the little voice, the little devil on your shoulder saying, you should be doing this. You have to be working out for at least an hour at a time for it to be effective. You must burn X amount of calories on your fitness watch for you to be allowed to stop your workout. Or, you have to work out on a Monday. We must never miss a Monday. And if you don't do it, then you're a failure. All of those things are rules. And once again, they're external to you, and little voices of things that are telling you to exercise in a certain way, and have created like that rigidity around what we're doing. But if we're looking to be intuitive, we're looking to get fitness back on your own team. And I've just seen Annette said that they like to go at their own pace, and that is in its essence being intuitive. It's listening to your body, working with your body rather than against it, to find what feels right for you. And so that can be about challenging the rules, figuring out what kind of movement you actually enjoy doing. One of the things I have in the Train Happy journal is a task to write down a list of all the ways of moving your body that you're just curious about. You don't even have to like it. You can just be curious about it. Radha mentioned some awesome ones: roller skating, swimming, dancing, trampolining, hiking. It could be CrossFit, it could be Pilates, it can be whatever you want it to be. But you could make a list of like 10 things. And rather than going like, I have to have this figured out straight away, I really recommend just slowly trying, certain activities you've listed, and then assessing how you feel. How did you feel before the workout that you were trying? And how did you feel? Say one of your things is, I might want to try running. You go to park run. How did I feel before park run? How did I feel during? And how did I feel after? Is this for me? Do I see myself doing this on a regular basis? And kind of having a bit of an assessment sheet on what that experience was like for you. So then you can decide what you can kind of figure out and put the pieces together of your own puzzle. Because like I said, I think one of the big things that limits us is that we think exercise looks a certain way and that we should have a physical outcome, and that means we're being successful. Or we should be doing it a certain way because someone on social media has told us that that's the most effective thing for whatever. But really, it's about what you enjoy doing. And so intuitive movement is really about empowering you as an individual to take control of your relationship with exercise in a healthy way, so that you have this deeper motivation to move your body in a way that feels good for you for the long term. So like I said, I had so many thoughts. I hope that has answered those queries. I could talk about this for days, which is why I wrote a book, but hopefully if people have more questions, I can answer them.
Absolutely, yeah, so helpful. And I think, yeah, judging by the comments, a lot of people are relating to this. We had a comment somewhere saying, oh yeah, from Amy saying, I feel amazing after hoovering and mopping the floor, but not after a run. Both are sweat inducing. So that's so interesting you can notice that about yourself. And we had another comment about, yeah, especially with working from home, sitting all day, exercise can be really important and helpful. And yes, all the different ideas of what the external pressures are. Katie's mentioned that her doctors are telling them to do a lot of exercise for chronic pain, and that's an external pressure. So I think what we're saying there hopefully has really helped everyone listening to understand what can support you. And I think creating that kind of menu, that's how I see it, as a little menu of activities that are your go-tos. I've got like 4 that I know, and then each day I kind of wake up and I think, right, what do I need today? Do I need something soft and gentle like yoga? Do I need to go and connect with nature and be outside? Do I need to get sweaty? If I'm feeling quite anxious about something, I need to have a little dance party to pop punk because that's the music I love. And yeah, it's just about finding what's right for you. So thank you everyone for commenting. I've also seen the results from the latest poll as well, which is how you approach your movement routine. And so far, 66% have said I pick from a range of activities depending on how I feel, which is fantastic. And then 34% say I stick to a schedule. And again, with all of this, I think what's really important is to find what works for you. So if sticking to a schedule is part of your personality type and that works for you, keep doing it. But if you want to try and lean into this intuitive movement idea, then definitely do. So moving on from this, we're going to be talking a bit more about movement for connection. And this is something I'm personally really finding helpful with Red January, is by intentionally moving my body every day, I am really connecting with myself and my body. And I'd love to hear both of your thoughts on this. So Tally, if we start with you, I'd love to hear, is this something you notice with yourself and perhaps with your clients? And do you notice a knock-on effect of becoming more in tune with yourself and how that maybe impacts other areas of your life?
Yeah, connecting with yourself is so important, and being in tune with your body is so important. And I think a big disruptor to that is that external noise of diet culture and that pressure to, like I say, exercise for a certain outcome of, a transformation photo or whatever else. And so something I'm super passionate about is helping people reconnect with their body, because a lot of us don't know what it feels like necessarily to be in our body, to experience embodiment in the moment when we exercise. A lot of us are tapping our watches and looking at our heart rate on a screen, looking at the calories on a screen, and not realizing that your greatest barometer for how you feel during your workout is you. Like I said, we're outsourcing so much of this data to other things. That could be on the screen in a class, it could be on the treadmill or whatever else. It could be an app on your phone, but it stops us being really present and in our bodies. And we know from a mental health perspective, and I'm sure Radha can speak on this, being most present in yourself can really help you with that anxiety, with that stress, because we're not thinking about the past, we're not thinking about the future, we're just in our bodies. And so connection is really important, and movement can be a wonderful way to do that. So, that can be through connecting with your breath through movement, with literally feeling your muscles, being able to wiggle your fingers and know that you're doing that. And a huge part of that connection is understanding your own kind of go button and your own stop button. So figuring out, you know, when do you like to move? How do you like to move? When do you feel, how does your body feel? How does your mind feel when you feel, you know, up for it? And when does it feel when it doesn't? And what does it feel like to listen to your body and take it back a notch? So an example for this is if I'm working with a client or if I'm teaching a class, is to really empower that client to say, you know your body best, so I'm going to give you the parameters of the workout. But if you feel that, so for example, if we're doing press ups and I say, we're going to do 8 to 12 reps, that's a rep range I want you to work within. If it feels good for you, if you get to 8 and it feels good for you, do 8. But if you want to carry on and do 10, you know your body best, do 10. If you want to do 12, do 12. If you want to stop before the 8, then stop. And then I know that we need to modify certain things so we can make it appropriate for you. And so constantly having that feedback and dialogue with yourself or with your trainer is really an important way to kind of figure out your own body and its own kind of cues. So I think often, like I say, one of the key things I suggest people to do is to take a break from tracking their workouts, take a break from that stuff. It might not need to be forever, but just to reconnect you with yourself, just to understand your own body better, you know, taking a break from that as well. And potentially taking a break from the kind of a rigid structure, especially if you feel tied to that structure, and especially if you feel guilty about not sticking to that structure and you struggle with taking rest days. Actually taking rest can be really powerful in kind of, you know, thinking of this pendulum swing, it's going to be really powerful in helping you reset to get to the middle. So, you know, all of those things can help you figure it out. It's not to say you can't use them eventually, but just whilst you're figuring stuff out and, you know, understanding how to work with your body rather than against it, then we can reintroduce certain things if we feel that they're going to benefit you.
Absolutely. And yeah, I love what you're saying there about the figuring out your go and stop button. That's something that is so helpful. And I wonder, you mentioned there about if like a personal trainer or a fitness instructor asks you to work within certain parameters. Do you have any thoughts on how people can speak to their personal trainers or their instructors if they want to work in more this intuitive way?
Yeah, I think there's going to be sort of like a conversation, a communication that needs to happen, and you know, it's a two-way conversation. Your trainer is not going to work in that way if you don't sort of explain to them and ask them to work in that way. And I think that's really important, and vice versa. If your trainer or your instructor is doing things that you're uncomfortable with, you are entitled to give feedback. You're the client, you're the customer. Customer's always right. So give feedback, because that's how we change and grow and evolve as an industry. And I really recommend people to do that, even if it's an anonymous email, if face-to-face thing isn't your bag. A way to give feedback, I think, is really important. And in that conversation with your trainer, if you're wanting to say, like, can we, you know, I'm figuring out how to kind of listen to my body more. So be confident to say, like, I actually think that's my limit, and communicate when's your limits. A little tool we learn as personal trainers is to ask people, like, how does it feel on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being super easy, 10 being super hard. So use that scale with your personal trainer and say, this is feeling like me at 8 reps, for example, that's a 10. And I think any further than that is going to be detrimental to my form. I can hurt myself. I don't want to push it too much. I know myself and I don't want to feel like I can't move tomorrow. So it's figuring out that. And I think using that, that scale of 1 to 10 is really helpful to kind of communicate that effort and how you're feeling. And if you feel like you've got more in the tank, or if you feel like you're at your limit.
Absolutely, I love that. And I think that's really important, because I know you can feel some pressure sometimes when you're working with a professional, like, oh, I must do what they say, I must do everything. But as you said, we are the experts of our own bodies, so we know what's best.
Can I just add to that as well? Because I think that's something I'd love to drive home, is that in the fitness industry, personal trainers and instructors like myself love to position ourselves as the expert of your body. We are not. We're there to facilitate you and to help you and work with you. But unfortunately, there's a bit of a power dynamic where people feel like they owe something to their trainer, or that we're going to judge them if they can't do certain exercises well. And sadly, the reality is there will be people out there working in the industry that do that. And if they do that, they're not the right person for you to work with. And there are other people that you can find and work with. You don't have to put up with stuff you don't feel comfortable with. You can, leave your trainer. You can go to a different class. We won't take it personally, because this is your journey, not ours.
Thank you, really appreciate that, and hope everyone has taken notes. We did have a comment from Sarah in regards to stopping tracking things. So Sarah is saying, I stopped counting lengths in the pool and it's made me so much more relaxed whilst in the water. At first my anxiety screamed at me that there was no point in swimming if I didn't have a number, but I knew the best thing was to go when I wanted to go and stop when I wanted to stop. So thank you so much for sharing, Sarah. That's really helpful for everyone to hear. So moving on to this idea of connecting to yourself, perhaps outside of the physical realm. Radha, I'd love to come to you on this, and maybe building that connection and building that self-trust. Can you explain maybe some of the benefits of this for us, and any tips for anyone wanting to build this connection, not necessarily through exercise, so just generally?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, I love, Tally, what you were saying about rest and rest days, and not that we should have to give permission to ourselves, but actually allowing ourselves to do that, because just like in nature, it's not summer all year round. We need that period of rest and consolidation. And actually, I think that was just a great comment, and to give kind of that sense to people that actually, sometimes that's a great thing, and sometimes that's what we need. And actually, when we come back then from that, we're actually more motivated and we've got a clear idea about what we want. So I love that. I'm really interested in the idea of how movement can actually help us connect to ourselves in sort of in the sense of our purpose, or in the wider scheme of who we are. So I know that when I go for a walk or a run or whatever I might do, or I swim or whatever it might be, that actually that gives me, it's not even kind of defined mental space. There's just something about it, something about moving your body and being in that present moment that opens up, I think, the opportunity for us to really start to understand ourselves, but not in a mental way. There's just something very intuitive about it. So, for example, often I'll be running, but not thinking about something that I want to do, or not thinking about an idea that I want to solve, or perhaps what I want to do in a year's time. But somehow it will come to me. I'll start to get clear about my purpose, why I'm getting up in the morning, what I want to do with my life. Maybe a difficult relationship or a difficult dynamic in my friendships. I'm not thinking about it mentally, but after I've been exercising or moving, somehow those things start to fall into place and become a bit clearer. And I think there's a space for, when we're moving, to discover more about who we are in terms of our purpose, what brings us joy, what lights us up, why we're here, what we want to do in terms of our lives, and how we want to rearrange things, or how we want to be in the world. And they're all very, sometimes those words like purpose can be very ethereal and very kind of intangible, but actually they're really tangible things. It's like, why do you want to get out of bed in the morning? What really makes you happy? What's your why in life? Why are you doing these things? And and what exactly do you want to do? But I also think movement gives us a space to connect to ourselves in that way that Tally was talking about, in that way of kindness and gentleness, and understanding what we need and when, and how to give ourselves that. So I think all of those things really, when we say, it's great to connect to ourselves, it can sound very up there in the clouds, and like it's perhaps for, I don't know, some guru who's sat and meditated for 20 years, but it's not like that at all. Literally connecting to yourself, I feel anyway, for me, just means that I'm understanding myself a bit more, and I'm spending more time with myself, and I'm starting to really develop a relationship with myself, just like we would do with a person we meet for the first time. In order to grow that friendship and to understand that person and how they work and how they tick, we need to put effort into that. We need to put time and patience and kindness, and we need to really listen to what that person is telling us. And in the same way, we need to really listen to what we need. So for me, movement and exercise is so much more than just physical and even just mental health. I think it's more about who we are in a wider sense and why we're here. And I think if we can reframe, movement as something that helps us to do that, I think then it becomes a real joy and not necessarily a chore.
I love that. I've never really thought of it in that way. So that's a really beautiful way to think about it. I'd love to know, do you have any tips of any activities that could help people create this connection? I know something I do is I write in my journal every day, and I do a meditation in the morning, like really simple anchor points at the beginning and the end of my day that help me tune into myself. I wondered if you had any other tips for how people can start cultivating that connection.
Yeah, so I think a couple of them have already been mentioned. So, for example, mindfulness, breathing, taking time for yourself to do that. I think having a few sort of flashpoints of joy within your day as well. So creating something actually that brings you joy every single day, and that can be really small. I mean, for me, I love having a bath. So for me, a bath is everything. And when I have a bath in the evening, I know that that's a sort of a bit of time and space for me to just relax. And when you're relaxing, you get that connection with yourself. But also, I mean, journaling is great, writing things down is fantastic. I think also for me to get sort of creative with that. So for example, for me, reading is incredible. Stories for me really help me. So watching a film or reading a book or listening to an audiobook, I find that if I can find a sort of story that resonates with me, a character that I recognize a bit of myself in, that actually in really tough times, I almost pretend I am that character and can almost kind of feel their pain, their struggles, and then I can see them in me and me in them. And I know that sounds a bit strange, but actually we learn through stories, we learn through art and culture and music and lyrics of songs. So for me, I think we can learn a lot about ourselves in finding those lovely bits of creativity and art and culture around us, that actually resonate and actually reflect who we are. So for me, I might be driving along, one time, and there'll be a lyric in a song that will just catch my ear, and I'll think, oh, I love that. Why do I love that? What's it about? What's going on? What do I need? Is it about being determined and carrying on? Is it, what is that about? And what is that telling me about myself? And for me, nature is the same thing. So going out into nature, getting that perspective of something bigger than me, looking at the renewal and the regeneration of life, when things are feeling quite stuck. When we connect with nature in that way, we're actually connecting with ourselves, because really nature is part of who we are. So using all of those really simple, free, accessible things around us, I think can really help, and to get creative with that and to use our imagination. I'm a big fan of how our imaginations can actually give us space from something tough. They can help us find solutions because we get creative and imagine what potentially could be and how we could potentially solve a situation. And it takes us away from all our worries. So I'm a big fan of using all of those things that we kind of already know, but we haven't quite necessarily tapped into for a long time.
That's amazing. I'm a massive film fan and book lover as well, so I can totally relate to that. And we had some really lovely comments whilst you were speaking. Kathleen said, I really like the way that Radha has captured that movement can shift our thoughts without the focus being on them. So our energy pattern moves mind and body. Thank you, Radha. That's just expressed perfectly. Thank you, Kathleen. We've had Leanne says, realizing that self-care is essential for me was a massive step in the right direction. I love a bath too. I write poetry and realize this is a great outlet for me and my mental health. Loving all these creative things coming through, and just, connecting with stories and reading. And Leanne also says she takes photos when I'm out on walks. This is really helpful. Thank you everyone for sharing. And looking at our poll results as well, we asked, do you feel connected to yourself physically and mentally? So 45% of you said kind of, which is a good start. 36% of you said yes, and then 19% of you said no. So I'm really hoping for those 19% of you that said no, that the ideas that Radha has shared has really inspired you to start doing this. So we're going to go and look at some of the questions that have come through for the final part of the webinar. I know we've had one in the Q&A section. Okay, so the first part of this question is for Tally, and that is, can you recommend any books or readings on intuitive eating? I'll definitely be checking out your book on movement.
So intuitive eating, there's a book called Intuitive Eating. You want to get the 4th edition. It's by Evelyn Tribbley and Elise Resch. They're the dietitians who created the framework. And so that's their work. And then in addition to that, I can recommend Just Eat It by Laura Thomas, who's a UK-based registered nutritionist who also has written about this in a very sort of, I think it came out 2019, but in a very 2019 context. I feel like it kind of brings it into that modern time. But there is also a bit about intuitive eating in my book, Train Happy, as well, which is like, if you're completely brand new to it, you can just get a quick sense of what it's about.
Perfect, thank you. Really good suggestions there. And we love Laura Thomas at Happiful. We've spoken to her for the podcast, and she's brilliant. The second part of this question was for Radha, and this is it worth having a conversation with our GP about intuitive eating?
Yes, definitely. I think it's really helpful, if you're working with your GP on something specific, to actually share your thoughts. We've gone beyond, thank goodness, the days of hopefully sort of paternalistic medical care where people are telling you what to do, and just like Tally said about personal trainers, your medical professional, your GP is there to support you, to work with you, and it very much has to be obviously that discussion and working out that kind of shared plan. So and as a GP myself, I love learning about things that I might not have heard of, or I don't know about, or what might work for people. That expands my mind, that gives me other options to go and look into that and research it, and then obviously to help other patients and other people who might also find that useful. So I think it's definitely worth talking about that. And also I think it's important to be honest with any person who's involved in your care about how you feel about a particular situation. I think exactly like Tally said so eloquently, it's very much about your body, your mind, your life, your journey. And so it's really important that transparency, that honesty is there, and that trust is there, that people can work together, because at the end of the day, nothing's going to work if there's one person telling another person what to do and vice versa. So it's all very much about discussing that. So I think that's a really great idea to have a chat about that with your GP, for sure.
Amazing, thank you. We've had another question, which is, do you have any suggestions on exercising with adrenal fatigue? I don't know if either one of you particularly want to answer that one. If either of you have any thoughts?
So I was going to say, so I think in terms of adrenal fatigue, so sort of symptoms relating to that can be sort of tiredness, or when people use that term, there can be sort of tiredness and lots of other non-specific sort of symptoms. So I think it's important to say, first of all, it's really important that if you have any symptoms like that, physical symptoms, to go and see your GP, get things checked out in terms of what we call organic causes. So anything that might be physically causing those symptoms initially, that's really important to check that out first medically. But I think also it's about working out, that's quite different to what we call adrenal insufficiency, which is obviously a very sort of very serious and sort of life-threatening condition. So they're two different things. But the first thing I would say is to go and get those physical symptoms checked out, and again also mental health symptoms, because when we feel chronically tired, obviously that could be a physical cause, but it can also be obviously related to our mental health in terms of depression. So that would be my first thing I would say about that, really, before you do anything.
Perfect, really good advice there, thank you so much. And yes, someone's just asked for the titles of the books, but Lucy is on it. She's popping the links into the chat for you now. Okay, so we had another question. Oh no, it was just about loving listening to our podcast. Well, thank you very much, that's really nice. So our podcast is called I Am, I Have, and that is by Happiful, and Lucy, who is in the chat, is our host for that. and you can hear episodes with both Tally and Radha on there, so do go through your archives. And also just note as well, if you have missed any of this session, this is also going to be going onto the podcast, so it'll be there for you if you want to listen to it again. I think that was the end of the questions. Let me just double check. I think there was one more question, which was about people that don't track whilst exercising. Do you measure your progression at all afterwards? I'm interested in how this might work for me. And I can see we've had a couple of responses, but I wondered, Tally and Radha, if you have any thoughts on this, how, whether or not you measure any kind of progression when it comes to exercising without tracking what you do.
So I think the myth with intuitive movement is that there is never any structure, there is never any sort of tracking a workout. For me, when I talk about tracking, I'm talking about like a fitness watch, that kind of thing. That's like activity monitoring. And especially if you're trying to like, reframe how you feel about exercise, and previously exercise has been so tied up in getting validation from numbers and being really tied to that, having a total break may be good. But it's not necessarily a permanent change. And there are other ways we can work on exercise. As a personal trainer, when I'm tracking progress with my clients, I firstly track, their sets, their reps. For example, if you are learning to do press ups, let's use a press up example again. If you're learning to do them, I want to know how many you can do on your knees, and then eventually we want to build that up to a certain amount, and then we work towards a full press up, and then we can see week on week, or whatever, that we can see a progression in that. And so just by tracking what you're doing in general, you can do that without being tied to like heart rate or that kind of stuff, which I think a lot of people really focus on. Second of all, I always recommend people filming their workout, certain aspects of their workout, so you can see an improvement in form, in technique. And I think that's huge. That's one thing I, occasionally do with clients, is when we're trying to work on something and I need to show them how they look doing it, but I kind of have that. And then 6 months later, we're doing the same exercise. Maybe we've been working on a squat. And I can show you, look at your depth has improved, your range of motion has improved, your strength, look at the weight you're using now compared to the body weight one we did at the beginning. So all of those sorts of things are ways to track your progress. And another one is always tracking how you feel. So if you're still not ready to look at the very specifics of what you're doing, tracking how you feel is really important. And this is something else that's outlined in the Train Happy journal. So reflecting on how you feel, like I said earlier, before your workout, during your workout, and after your workout, I think could be really great ways of seeing those benefits and understanding those benefits of how you're feeling. Because another sort of myth bust around intuitive movement is that you're always going to love it. It's always going to be in the moment, enjoyable, rainbows, sunshine, smiles. It might not be. Intuitive movement can be a challenging workout if that's what you enjoy. If you want to get hot, sweaty, it's fairly intense, that could intuitively be right for you. So in the moment, you might not necessarily love it. I can't say I always love it when I'm, at the end of a sprint in one of my spin classes. But I know at the end, I feel, I look at the feeling afterwards. And so that's a really great way to track your progress. Can you see a, improvement in your confidence, in your self-esteem, in your body image? I think that can be really, when we start moving our bodies and recognizing that and celebrating what we're capable of and what we're doing, that can be a huge sense of pride. One of the things I think that hold us back a lot is getting focused on thinking about what we look like when we're exercising and how other people perceive us, if they're judging our bodies when we're exercising, what others are thinking of us and what others are thinking of our capabilities. But when you can really get, hone in on how you feel, on feeling your strength improve, feeling your stamina, your fitness, your endurance, your mobility, your balance, your skill, whatever it is, that can be a real source of self-esteem and motivation to kind of keep progressing and keep going as well. So don't always just think about the physical, think about the internal as well.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Tally. And I love the idea of tracking how you're feeling as well, because I think that can be a really helpful motivator to remind yourself like, hey, I do actually feel really good when I do this, so let's do it. And speaking of motivation, I noticed a question about struggling with motivation during time of the month. So when you're having your cycle, which often leads to feeling an uphill struggle to get back into a routine. I'm going to make a huge effort in trying softer exercises, but do you have any other tips and suggestions? And I can definitely relate to this one because I struggle quite badly with cramps. And for me, the only thing I can do on the day is usually either just lie on the sofa with a hot water bottle and some chocolate, or I do very soft like yoga. I do yoga specifically for cramps. So that's something I would suggest, but I'd love to hear from either of you two if there's anything else you can suggest when it comes to motivation when you're struggling with that time of the month.
I would totally agree about again, kind of listening to what you need and not what you think you should do. So choosing that gentler exercise or that exercise that's going to help you in terms of that particular time of the month. During the times kind of during the last sort of year, I mean, I always used to just go to sort of my 3 gym classes every week. I love them. I still love them. But actually there was a period when things were really busy, things were really hectic. And actually I realized that I didn't actually want to go to do a group class for a while. I actually needed to go out for a cycle by myself to have that mental space. I didn't want to go to a group class and chat to people. I just needed to have that mental space. So I think it's about choosing what you need in that moment and not beating yourself up for it, not blaming yourself, not judging yourself. I think also really helpful with menstrual symptoms in terms of actually tracking your periods and when those periods and when those times are going to happen for you, so that actually when we see in front of us a sort of a calendar and we understand the reasons as to why we have low motivation and when that might actually occur, then we're prepared for it, ready for it, and so we're less likely to judge it, criticize ourselves, and less likely to be surprised by it. And there's often times for me in the month where I'm sort of feeling a little bit low or a bit down or a bit emotional, and I'm like, oh, why am I feeling like this? And then my period starts, and I'm like, oh, well, that's why. But, I could have known that, and I wouldn't have that internal kind of battle, internal kind of critique of myself. So I think knowledge is power when it comes to that. But I really do think it's about working, as Tally quite rightly said, working with your body, not against it. Because if you work against it or in spite of it, it's just going to cause extra stress, extra problems, and you're going to end up kind of establishing that kind of an unhealthy relationship, I think, with yourself.
Love that. Thank you so much.
I'd love to add to that if possible, because I think Radha made some great points, but I'm just seeing conversation about motivation and people talking about ways they get motivated to work out. And I think no matter how you're feeling, whether you're about due on your period or not, you can always give yourself unconditional permission to rest. This is another principle of intuitive movement where we say, like, no matter what, you don't need to earn it. You don't have to have, this, huge reason. If you feel you need to rest, you're always allowed to rest. And actually creating that, it can create like a metaphorical safety net for you, so that you feel like if you're always allowed to rest, then you might be more inclined to move. But in the instance of waking up and feeling like, should I move today because I know I'm getting pains, or I'm not comfortable and bloated, I'm tired and all the rest of it, should I move or should I not? This is my little thing I always say to people, and this can go in the context of any day of the month. Firstly, if you're like not sure, like the whole like, am I being intuitively needing to rest, or would actually moving benefit me in this moment? Firstly, get changed, put on your activewear, put on your workout outfit, and then ask yourself, like, okay, now I've done that, do I want to move? Like, do I want to, whether you're doing a thing at home, like, should I put my workout mat out, or should I leave the house? Say we're going for a run, you can leave the house, you can start walking down your street, and you can go like, am I feeling this? Like, how am I doing? Like, do I want to do this? And at any point you are allowed to turn back, go home, put your feet back up on the sofa, but that. So that's always there. That's your safety net. But you might feel like, okay, well, I got to the end of the street, I started walking, maybe I'll gently jog to the next block or whatever. And you can gently jog. And you might feel that it might go one of two ways. Either you get into it and you're like, do you know what? I feel like moving and being outside, fresh air is really going to benefit me right now, and I am going to move. But I also know that during this run, I can walk whenever I want, I can stop, and I can cut it short if I'm not feeling it. Sometimes for people that means that they do the longest run they've done in a long time because they know that you're always allowed to rest. For others, it can be an opportunity to go like, there's no shame, I don't have to beat myself up if I'm not going to be able to give it 100% today, and I can go home whenever possible. And so, you know, always having that opportunity to rest is really important, but you get to keep asking yourself that question at any point. So do keep checking in with yourself. It's part of that getting to know yourself and connecting with your body, because sometimes, like, I know myself, sometimes I'm like, Sally, you just need to just get on with it, but other times I'm like, no, actually it's a chill day, and you will learn to know that through trial and error.
Absolutely, and that's so helpful, because it's so true. There are days where you're like, am I just saying this so I can do this, or do I actually benefit from doing some movement? And I think, yeah, what you suggested there was brilliant, so thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I think that about wraps it up for us all. So thank you so much everyone for joining. Tally, if you could share where everyone can connect with you online if they have any follow-up questions or they just want to connect with your work.
You can find me at Tally Rye on Instagram, on TikTok, and my website is tallyrye.co.uk. I also have a podcast where I continue these conversations every Monday, and so it's worth checking that out and listening to that as well. Also, my book, the Train Happy Journal, really is a how-to on how to put all of this into practice. So I hope you enjoy those as well. Oh, and someone's coming to my retreat. I do retreats as well, but it's all on my website. You can find it all on there.
I was going to say, I saw that somebody's heading there. And Radha, how about yourself? How can everyone connect with you?
Yes, so I'm at Dr. Radha Modgil on Twitter, at Dr._Radha on Instagram. And yeah, I just launched a podcast myself in January, which is called Things I Forgot Were Good for Me. So that's all about, like I say, all of these kind of small and simple things, all to the huge things that we kind of really knew when we were little, but have totally squeezed out of our lives. So yeah, it'd be lovely to see any of you over there. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
No problem, and thank you everyone for joining. And you can check out more about Red January at redtogether.co.uk. And if you want any more information about Happiful, you can either go to happiful.com or you can download our free Happiful app, where you can read some inspiring content, you can read the back issues of our magazine, and you can also connect with mental health and wellbeing professionals. And yeah, thank you so much for joining, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day.